Welcome to this edition of Mental Health Minutes, where we actually debunk some misconceptions surrounding COVID-19 and the vaccine. I'm here with our very own Melissa Swank. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me again.
I think it's really important that we do a brief introduction, if you don't mind doing one on yourself, regarding why is this topic something that you actually have a lot of information on?
Sure. So, not only am I a passionate health and wellness expert, and I have that background and passion, I also have a master's degree in epidemiology, which is the study of the spread and the determinants of disease and how we use that information to improve the health of our communities. So, that background, and I'm also a professor, adjunct professor at Fontbonne University, teaching health educators how to talk a little bit about epidemiology.
Well, you are well versed. Well, so excited then. I hope you can actually shed some light. When we say debunk some of those misconceptions, I know there's a lot of myths going on there and what is truly fact, what isn't. So let's just jump in. Who should get the vaccine, right? So we hear that let's even move a little bit, rewind a little bit. So there's two different vaccines, right? And so which vaccine is better, who should get it, and kind of start there.
Right. So there are two vaccines right now that are approved for use in the United States. One's from Pfizer and one is from Moderna. And they have very similar efficacy profiles, which means that they've been tested through clinical trials and they both show at least a 95% efficacy toward the resistance or this illness. So both of them are great. They are perfect options. So whichever one you can get is great, and go ahead and do that. They have been tested. One has been tested for 16-year-old and older, and the other one has been tested for 18-year-olds and older. So if you do have someone that falls in that gap of 16 and 18, make sure that you get the correct vaccine, and I'm sure your healthcare provider will make sure of that as well.
So I know there's different levels of who can, get tested, and there's these windows that are opening up. Can you explain a little bit about why they're doing that? And, really how do we, if we're interested, how do we find out when our window is? Where do we go to register? Those kind of helpful hints.
That's a great question, because I think everybody is anxious to get this vaccine, and we all wonder, why can't I just walk in and get it? The phased process for giving out this vaccine is really intended to reach the people of highest concern first. So they are our front-facing healthcare workers, the people on the front line that are facing COVID daily and being exposed to that virus. And so their viral load, the amount of virus that they may be exposed to and carry, tends to be higher. So we really need to protect those people first. And that was our phase 1A, which has already happened and is in the process of finishing. Then we're at phase 1B, which is kind of the additional front-facing workers, essential workers, people that are constantly being facing the community and that sort of thing. Then you move on to our phase 2. That's going to take us into higher education and some additional groups or communities that are of higher need and also considered essential. And then the general public is phase 3. The key is knowing when your phase comes about. And there are a couple of ways to do that. So the Department of Public Health actually has a link that you can click on and register yourself by asking or answering, I should say, a few questions that they ask you. And they'll ask you, does your work involve providing healthcare to people? Are you an essential worker in the following businesses? And after they go through that litany of questions, you'll get a better idea of not only what phase you fall in, but when you can expect to receive that vaccine. Right now, they are really identifying people in phase 1A and 1B. But once you get into their list, as soon as the next phase opens, you are in their catalog of emails to send out and let you know that you're available. The one interesting thing I want to share is that there are multiple lists like this. So the Department of Public Health has one, but a lot of other entities, including many local and regional hospitals, have these lists also. So join every list you can. It's actually suggested to do that by the Department of Public Health. And then whichever phone call or email you get first, that's where you would go to get your vaccine.
So let's talk a little bit about the vaccine. If you get vaccinated, can you still get COVID, right? What exactly is the makeup of the vaccine and the probability of success?
Yeah, so this vaccine is a little bit different. Most other vaccines that you may have had in the past are part of the virus or the virus itself that's been attenuated or sort of broken down to the point where it's no longer capable of making you sick. This vaccine is different in that it takes just a portion of the viral DNA. It's called mRNA, which is messenger RNA, and that only codes for one protein on the surface of the virus. So it doesn't code for what makes you sick in the virus. It's just coding for this protein. It's called the spike protein. And I like to think of it as like a little flag that sticks up in waves on the outside of the protein or on the virus. That protein is unique to COVID-19, which is or the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and that's what makes this so unique. The vaccine targets that protein, and so we do know that the viral vaccines are very efficacious. I mentioned before that they're about 95 and 96% effective. Um, the way that mRNA vaccine works, it sort of provides your cells a blueprint. When the messenger RNA comes into your body, it goes into the cytoplasm of your cell, but not into the nucleus. And if you remember from biology in high school, your cell has different components called organelles, and the nucleus is what houses your DNA. In the outside of the nucleus, like around it, is the cytoplasm. And that's where mRNA is processed by your ribosomes. I'm not going to get too much into the biology of it, but I want to mention that because it doesn't ever enter your nucleus. So it has no chance of changing your DNA. I think a lot of people are very concerned that by getting a messenger RNA vaccine that they are going to basically incorporate this into their DNA code. That's just not how this works. So that protein is being produced by the ribosomes, and then the protein is exuded into your body, and your body recognizes it as foreign and creates antibodies. The same way it might do that if you actually had the virus, but there's no virus present. It's just the protein that it's creating the antibodies to. That way, when you're exposed to the virus, your body already has antibodies and it can say, oh, I recognize that flag. I know what that is, and I can attack it right away, and the person won't get sick.
So kind of like the flu shot, will you end up, what we end up having symptoms, right, of the flu? What I'm hearing is it's different, right? Because it's an mRNA versus, what we typically know as the flu shot. But I still think people don't quite they put them by each other, right? And so, can you explain, will we feel sick after we get it? Will we still get, COVID after our shot, like the flu shot? You can still get the flu. Can
Yeah.
you kind of, speak in terms comparing it to that?
Flu. Yeah, sure. So a lot of times our reactions to vaccines are because we are purposely trying to jumpstart our immune system. And because of that, your body reacts with a mild immune response. And often that means sore, achy muscles or soreness at the injection site, fatigue, usually very mild symptoms. And sometimes people are experiencing that with the COVID vaccine. And you should generally expect maybe mild symptoms, but really nothing more. We haven't seen a very large profile of symptoms. And similar to the flu vaccine, your body is producing these antibodies. Now, the flu is a different virus, so it acts differently than the coronavirus does. And the flu virus is mutating. And so every year we come up with a new flu vaccine. We don't have enough data to understand right now how this coronavirus is going to work in the future. But right now, it looks like it's being very protective against the coronavirus and getting it. So once you get that vaccine and its follow-up booster, 2 weeks after that booster, you should be fairly well protected. I do want to reiterate that it isn't just one shot. You do need to get the booster. That's really what takes you over that threshold and make sure that you have that strong immune response to the virus.
So if you get if you get the vaccine, is it so after that 2 week period, is it just like before COVID even existed, right? You're a new person and you can do whatever, like you have no way of passing it on, you're protected, life is good. Is that how it is?
So, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, right? We still need everybody to take precautions and do the same things where you're social distancing and you're hand washing and you're wearing your mask. I've also heard a lot of people say, I've gotten the COVID, so I don't need to wear a mask anymore. I usually come back with, I had chicken pox twice. Now, chicken pox is a different virus, but your body's natural immune system or immune response, which is called natural immunity, it doesn't always produce a robust enough response, which is why I got chicken pox twice. I don't think anyone wants to get COVID twice. So definitely make sure you get that vaccine, even if you've already had it. And once you get the vaccine, also make sure that you are wearing your mask and washing your hands, because really we want to make sure that we contain this as best as we can. And the only way to do that is to keep those precautions going until enough people have been vaccinated and we see numbers go down.
Can you explain why kids will not receive the vaccine, right? If they're under 16 or 18, are they just immune altogether?
That's a really good question, because my kids keep asking also, when am I going to get it? And kids have not been tested. So when we do clinical trials, we test it for a particular population. And then once you know how it acts in that population, you can kind of extrapolate or infer that the population that it represents can also receive that vaccine. Children weren't included in those original trials. So right now, they're doing trials from, I think, 5 to 11 and 11 to 18 or 11 to 16, depending. Those are in process, but they're not complete yet. And so because we don't have those data, we don't know the safety and efficacy profile of the vaccine in children. Now, kids are still asking questions, which I think is awesome. My kids love this podcast called Brains On. It's a free podcast on whatever podcast provider you have. And it's a kids science-based podcast that talks a lot about all different topics. But they happen to have one episode entirely devoted to the COVID vaccine. It's about 45 minutes to an hour long, but it's a really fun thing to pop in the car while you're driving. And my kids love it. They make it a lot of fun, and it does a very good job of explaining the vaccine to kids.
Oh, that's great. And I know that you have lots of different publications, articles surrounding this too that we'll also share and attach to this. Awesome. Well, what else have I missed, Melissa, that you would add for anyone that's curious?
Yeah, you know what? There are a lot of myths around there. So if you're curious and you hear something that sounds fishy or strange, go to a reputable source to get some information about it. I've heard everything from, they're trying to track us or get information or implant little homing devices. All of that information can be debunked if you go to a reputable source like the CDC or your Department of Public Health. There's a lot of information out there. So I just urge you to use those resources. And as you get information that sounds a little bit iffy or strange, do due diligence and research it, or reach out to someone you know who can help you point in the right direction.
Melissa, would that be something that Keelians could reach out to you and you're able to help navigate as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sure the COVID task force would be able to help as well. I'm always available if anyone needs me.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks so much for spreading some light on this subject. I know it's ever changing and very complicated, so it's great to have, your side and breaking it down a little bit for us to understand. So
Absolutely.
thanks for tuning in to this Mental Health Minute. Until next time, stay healthy.